So we've been doing a lot of HTML and front-end changes in our application, but it's time to explore the database. And specifically, now I'm going to show you how to add users to your application so that you can store user names, emails, logins, and stuff like that. So people can set up accounts in your application. Now, if this was a longer course and we had a lot more time, I might show you how to set up users from scratch. But we have a lot more to get to. So I'm going to show you a very popular gem called Devise that a lot of Ruby on Rails developers use for setting up user basically registration and authentication inside their application. So if you just search for Devise Ruby, you'll probably find it right at the top. And it's called Flexible Authentication Solution for Rails with Warden. Authentication is basically, what it means is a way of checking if someone is who they say they are. So their email and password, essentially, is what we're going to be using. And we authenticate that someone is who they say they are. Now, this is a very, very robust library. And what I mean by that is there's a lot you can do with it. In fact, you see it actually comes with 10 submodules. You have the database version, which lets you store passwords and stuff. We're going to use that. Omniauthable. This adds OmniAuth support. OmniAuth is what lets people create accounts with Facebook or Twitter on your application. We're not going to be using that as part of this class. Confirmable, you can send email confirmation instructions to verify whether the email is real. We're not going to be using that. Recoverable, to reset the user password and send reset instructions. We're going to turn that off by default. The reason we're not doing that or confirmable is because we're not going to be setting up email sending inside of our application right now. If that's something you want to explore further, you'd have to check out an emailing library such as SendGrid, create an account there, connect that to your Rails application. It's actually a fairly easy process, but it's not something I'm going to show you how to do because it's not something we have time to do. Although I do highly encourage you to explore it if it's something you want to do inside your application. Registerable, which is letting a user register. Rememberingable lets someone actually get remembered using a saved cookie. Trackable, we will be tracking sign-ins and timestamps. Timeoutable, expiring sessions that have not been active. Validatable, so validate the email and password. And lockable, so locking an account after a specific number of failed sign-in attempts. There's a lot that this library does. So how do we actually set it up? If you scroll down to the Starting with Rails section of the documentation, you'll see it says, for your first application, we don't recommend using Devise. It requires a good understanding of the Rails framework. That is kind of true. So this next part may be a little confusing, and I say just stick with me because we're going to power through it anyway. And then in the next section, specifically next week, we're going to go into the whole model view controller thing, and you'll learn a lot more about how this works. So let's get going. The first thing you're going to need to do is open up Sublime Text and make sure you open the folder of OM Rails. And if you don't have the sidebar, you can go to View, Sidebar, and turn that on. And we're going to add this into our gem file, just like we did before. Gem Devise. Now there's another line you're going to need for Rails 5. And it may not be obvious here. Let's see if I can find it anywhere. Rails 5. No, not right now. Let's see if this works. I believe this might actually just be all we need. So we'll add that, save that, and open up the terminal. And do you remember that command we have to run? First of all, make sure we're in our right folder, but oh, interesting. So because I added the version of Ruby here, it says, warning, RVM used my gem file for selecting Ruby. Heroku does that too. You can ignore these warnings with this. So yeah, I'll go ahead and run that command. So I ignore this warning so I don't get it again. I literally just copy this. Half the times when you read an error message, by the way, it'll tell you what you should run. So read that stuff first before you really freak out too much. Okay, so we're in here. And the command that you run for installing a new gem you added to your gem file is it's bundle install. So I'm going to start to rely on you to be able to come up with this stuff instead of having to look to me for all the answers, especially if we've done this once or twice before. So we're installing a few other gems now that Devise relies on. And basically we now have Devise on our computer.